is a correlation between church attendance and toleration of cannabis is well, in Europe there's a negative correlation. That is, the country with the highest rate of church attendance is the Netherlands, and the lowest rate is Sweden.
What would you mind telling the people back in Louisville something about the drug education, in the Netherlands? I mean, here we have the DARE program, and we're familiar with that. But what is it over in Holland?
Well, this, of course, is one of the key points about prohibition and drug education. In the Netherlands, drug education is not prohibition; it's propaganda. It is actually designed to discourage young people from, problematic drug use. And so they accurately describe the various risks of various substances. Now, they don't say that cannabis is harmless. They say that it has acceptable risks. And they are very honest in dealing with those risks. And the same is true of other more problematic drugs. And that way, the kids believe it. And over the last 30 years, I don't know how many times I've had young people tell me, when I found out they'd lied to me about marijuana, I thought they'd lie to me about everything else. And so I've had...
that's an interesting...
I've really had so many kids say that to me. And I have a couple of things posted on marijuananews.com really funny from... I posted a story about DARE a few years ago, and I got this wonderful email from a young man in Texas who said, oh, he loved DARE. He was always be grateful to DARE, because if it weren't for DARE, he might never have tried marijuana. But when he had his DARE class and they told him how bad it was, well, he just had to try it. And he says it really helped him using marijuana. It helped a lot of, he was having some behavioral problems, and when he used marijuana, he did not have the behavioral problems. And this was that he ended up self-medicating successfully with cannabis. And I know quite a few young people who have and so he was always very grateful to DARE. Well, by the way, up here in Canada, the police are still peddling the DARE program, particularly in small towns, even though the head of DARE in the States, Glenn Levant, had said that it wasn't working. Now, if you criticize the DARE program, you write a letter to the paper in any place and you say DARE doesn't work, you'll get, they will carry a letter from local NARC DARE officer who says, well, this person's obviously pro-drug and anti-child because all of the students that I had in my DARE program said it was good. And of course, that wasn't really the question. The question is, is DARE an effective program at reducing substance abuse among kids? No, apparently it is counterproductive. And one reason it is because the kids find out that they've been lied to about marijuana, and then they think they've been lied to about everything else. And that can be very dangerous.
In Holland?
In Holland, they tell the kids the truth, and so the kids know. The Netherlands has a hard drug use rate that is about a tenth that of the United States. There are almost no young junkies in the Netherlands. The average age of junkies in the Netherlands is almost 40 and rising. As the United States is about 19 and falling. So this is the same problem in the UK. And you have, again, part of that is there are two things that work there. One is separation of the markets so the kids can get marijuana without coming into contact with hard drugs. And the other thing is that the kids really believe the accurate information given to them by the Dutch school system. And they really do. I mean, they go out of their way not to exaggerate the stories and turn the kids off.
So you have good things to say about Holland. Your experience was there good?
As best I remember, yes. No, I personally I enjoy Holland very much. I have a lot of Dutch friends. I get over there as often as possible, usually a couple times a year. I've lived there for a while. It's a very interesting thing to understand about the Netherlands is that they have a history of social tolerance. And tolerance to them means simply that you may not like something, you may disapprove of something, but that doesn't mean that it is a good idea to use the criminal law and the force of the state to suppress it. And that is something that they do right. And they've historically, I mean, they've done that. When the Jews were expelled from Spain and Portugal in 1492, a lot of them went to Holland, and they were accepted there. The various religious groups from England that were being persecuted sought refuge in Holland. The Dutch simply find it practical, good for business, to tolerate people that you disagree with or disapprove of. And this is
so they're accepting.
Yeah. And so they accepted cannabis. Now, just in the last few years, the polls show that the majority of the Dutch people think that it is okay, with in terms of they do not disapprove of smoking cannabis. But before that, they disapproved but didn't want to arrest people. A lot of Americans have that attitude. Americans generally, I mean, I think most American citizens have that attitude. Is that I don't like it. I don't particularly approve of it, whatever it is in this particular case. But if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Most Americans really feel that way. Mm-hmm. Now, there is historically this tension in American history between individualism and collectivism, between Puritanism and the idea of basically of the Jeffersonian ideal of complete separation of church and state, and the idea of again tolerating individual freedom. And so there's this tremendous conflict in the states, and you can particularly see this sometimes in the same individuals. And if you listen to the rhetoric of the people in the Republican Party, who will talk about the evils of government, except for marijuana prohibition. The government's an awful thing. The government isn't to be trusted, but the government says marijuana's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. So you hear you run into that a lot. You run into the same thing on the left. Liberals that we have to respect the rights of the individual. That if a woman has a right to have an abortion, people have a right to lead their own sex lives, and people have a right to do this. People have a right to do that. What about marijuana? Oh, that's different. The government has to protect them there. Uh-huh. So this is so you find that on both sides of the political spectrum.
Let me ask you this while we're talking about politics and strategically speaking. And historically speaking, in the United States, this prohibition of alcohol was something that was fought out over many years, and many strange and weird scenarios went on before that whole thing came down, and they were able to make it so the politicians all had to become prohibitionists in order to stay in office and so forth, and then. Finally, Al Capone and so forth was taken over, and that whole black market developed, and then finally people got fed up with it, and prohibition was voted out, is my understanding. Now with marijuana, on the other hand, marijuana prohibition, and speaking as a physician, to me personally, one of the most striking things about marijuana is not simply its multitude of practical uses as a medicine. That is extremely interesting, and we could go on for a long time talking about that, and also mention that up here in Vancouver there's a compassionate club where people who have chronic illnesses and AIDS and cancer, and who are dying and want to have some peace of mind from one of the least toxic substances on earth, are able to get it here in Vancouver. But anyway, what I'm saying is, aside from the medical uses of marijuana, marijuana is in itself a very non-toxic substance. And because of that, because it's so much less toxic than alcohol or tobacco or so many prescription drugs. Why, as a physician, I'm saying to me the logical thing is just to decriminalize it, and then all of the learning that can take place because of